Good evening. Welcome to WTF Fantasy Football. Jim Day. And the guy in the little corner over there, which you can't see, is Brian. He's going to a Buffalo Bills game this week, and he's going by choice. I just found out that he's not made to go there. Now, Brian, what are the situation that's involved with you going to a Bills game?
All right, so I am the commissioner of the Alcoholic Haze Fantasy League here in Syracuse. And every year we try to do something fun with the guys, and we said, hey, why don't we go do a bus trip this year? A couple guys are Bears fans in the league, a couple Bills fans said, let's go out to Buffalo. We'll have some fun. And basically the gist of it is they cook for you, they drive you, and they supply you with beer up and back. So I don't care anything about this game. In fact, this is how much I'm into this trip. I went to the store and bought a Buffalo Sabres winter hat to wear to the game just so I can look like I kind of fit in. But God help me if someone comes up and says, hey, how about the Sabres this year? I can name more women wrestlers than I can anyone in the NHL. So if you see a kid in a Buffalo Sabres hat this weekend, don't ask.
I'm going to help you out. Jim, I'm going to help him out. Say, you know what? It's been really downhill since Clint Malachuk. He's the goalie that got skated over and cut his neck.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, really? I didn't even hear about that. Holy crap.
Oh, that was like 20 years ago.
Oh.
So
the Sabres probably sucked 20 years ago, too.
Yeah. So just go with that and see if they might think you're smarter and leave you alone. I'll tell you what, it's real interesting in fantasy football this week. The NFL turned into Major League Baseball, Jim. We had trades at the trade deadline.
Yeah, a lot of trades too, and some decent players being moved. It was very interesting. The way they were talking, though, it seemed like there were going to be a lot more than what we did see move. But guys like Golden Tate that really came out of left field for some, and of course Amari Cooper going even before that, and just a lot of movement out there, and going to change some fantasy outlooks going forward.
Yeah, they certainly will. And I'll tell you, Amari Cooper, Demaryius Thomas, and Golden Tate, 3 wide receivers, Brian. Who do you think ends up in the best for fantasy owners, the best new address, and who ends up in the worst?
Well, I think the best in terms of an NFL fit standpoint for this year, I think is going to be Golden Tate, because I think he's joining the best team of all of those, and he's going to fill a role that they need. For fantasy, I think it's going to be Amari Cooper. And maybe a week or so ago, I wasn't necessarily on board with that. But seeing how they're going to use him and the way that offense is kind of turning a corner, I think Cooper is going to get the targets. He's going to get some shots downfield. And basically, he's going to get opportunity. And I don't think the other 2 guys are going to get as much as Amari Cooper. So it puts him kind of by default as the top guy of these 3 trade candidates.
I agree. I think it's Golden Tate, Jim. I think he ends up with a place. I think in PPR leagues, he's really going to flourish in that offense. But I'll tell you what's interesting. Demaryius Thomas actually has an offense now with a quarterback and maybe some offensive design there. I'm interested to see if Demaryius Thomas has anything left, Jim.
Yeah, me too, Tony. I definitely want to see that as well. I am on board with Brian, though. I think, Cooper is going to get laid in pretty quick and pretty heavily from the start. There's no way Jerry Jones is paying a first for him and not letting this guy be heavily involved right from the get-go. They spent the whole off week working with him, trying to get him extra time. So he's more ready than, let's say, the other guys that have been traded this past Tuesday are going to be. So, he should be ready this week and have more than a limited, game plan in place for him. So I expect him to have a pretty decent game this week in what could be a game where he's seeing 10, 12 targets.
I'll tell you right now, I think the guy that's a winner, we talked on last week's show, Kenny Golladay. We talked about how he was touchdown dependent and he wasn't getting enough snaps on the field. I think, Brian, you brought that up in last week's show. Now Golladay should get more opportunities.
Well, I'm worried that they're changing the whole dynamic of their offense with this. Maybe it's more of a philosophical thing where they're going to say, you know what, let's lean on Kerryon Johnson a little more. Let's try to run the ball. Let's not put as much on Matthew Stafford's plate. And I mean, not that they have the greatest defense in the world to do that, but you could see getting rid of a guy who was your team leader in receptions and all these other things for so long to say, all right, now we're going to put that on this young kid Galladay. I don't know. I still think Marvin Jones is going to be the big dog and eat there. And I'm worried that Galladay is going to get overhyped in fantasy circles where he's not going to be, I think you could find better production elsewhere because they're philosophically going to shift the offense.
See, now you're talking about him being overhyped. I want to talk about somebody else that's been really overhyped this week based on that same thought process, and that's going to be Courtland Sutton in Denver. Look, he's a good player. I think he's going to be a really good player at one point, but he is so, been pushed so far forward right now that I don't think he can meet the expectations that people are setting for him. He's still going to be in the role Demaryius Thomas was there, with Sanders still being the main guy. And, as soon as Deshaun Hamilton is fully 100%, I think we're going to see him in this mix as well. And I think that's going to take a little bit off Sutton's plate. Sutton is going to be a big play guy, but if you don't hit those big plays, he's not going to score you a lot of fantasy points. And I think people are just driving his value through the roof right now. If you're holding Courtland Sutton, now would be the perfect time to try and sell him.
I was talking with Matt Waldman this week on my.
Oh, you name dropper, you.
And we were talking to him on our other show here for Fighting Chance Fantasy, and he was telling me how that Courtland Sutton isn't a great route runner at all. And basically, he's just going up and winning contested balls in the end zone. He's kind of very limited in his route tree. And what you just said, explained how Deshaun Hamilton is a much more complete route runner and receiver. And Jim, just as you said, also is going to be a big factor in this offense and could be the guy for fantasy to be that number 2 behind Emmanuel Sanders. So I think you're hitting the nail right on the head there. And I do agree. Sutton's been blown way out of proportion because fantasy guys just see opportunity and they're like, oh, he's the new guy. You plug him right in. He's going to get all of Demaryius's numbers for the past 5 years. And it just doesn't happen that way. You have to have that football IQ also. And I don't think Courtland Sutton has that yet.
Jim, it's week 9. We're real late into the season, right? I thought I got someone off the waiver wire this week that I could actually use, but now I'm contemplating that I might have not been able to, but it only cost me $1. I went and picked up Cordarrelle Patterson in my leagues. Last week, he started at running back for the New England Patriots. Now, I don't think he's going to benefit until he actually got some running back designation, because you always have a wide receiver you can play even on bye weeks. But I thought if he ever gets running back and wide receiver, you know what? I might use him a week or two somewhere down the line. But he's on the injury report. He's questionable this week. Jim, what do you think about the Patriots running back situation and Patterson now being on the field involved in the running back situation with the Patriots?
Hey, look, I thought it was a smart move by them last week. That Kenyon Barner isn't somebody who can, be that early down back. He's a small guy. He's not built for that kind of running. They needed somebody who could just run it up the middle every few chances. And, he did a good job with that for what he said. He's not going to get enough work as a running back, especially now it looks like Sony Michel may play this week, which, of course, puts the kibosh on all of that. But, with Gordon rounding into play now and Edelman there and even Hogan still being involved, it's really hard to see, Patterson doing anything on the receiving end as well. So, as I wrote in my waiver wire report this week, don't go there. Stay away. It's not worth your effort. You just didn't read it, Tony.
No. You got, sometimes you got to take a shot, Jim. You got to take a shot in life every once in a while. Speaking about a shot in life, I'm going to ask you a question that's totally unfair, so I'll answer it first. Who do you think right now in the National Football League would be the most valuable player that will get no consideration? And the reason I ask that question is Capri Bibbs is questionable this week. The Washington Redskins, if you don't look, they have a winning record. They're in first place in the division, and they wouldn't be there without Adrian Peterson. And no one will say Adrian Peterson will be the MVP, Jim, but he's the guy that should be the MVP that no one will vote for.
Well, I don't know if I'd go all there, Tony. Look, he's having a much better season than any of us predicted. I'll be the first to say it. I didn't see this coming. But in reality, he's had 3 big games and then 4 games of being mediocre.
If they lost 2 of them, they'd have a losing record.
But I understand that. Game script takes him out of the game. So at that point, if game script is easy enough to take him out of the game, then it really is hard to vote for him as an MVP.
Brian, I like the old guys.
Yeah, Adrian Peterson's having a great year compared to what we thought he would have. To answer your question, a guy who I think could be an MVP candidate that'll get 0 votes to be Phillip Rivers. Speaking of another old guy, he's having a great season. I mean, he's just every week in and out. He goes, he puts up big yardage. He throws touchdowns. His team's doing okay. They're winning games, and he does it with a myriad of weapons. He's got every receiver named Williams who's ever played in the NFL on his team. And, they're cruising right along under the radar. So I think my vote, if your question, would be Phillip Rivers for the unsung hero of MVP voting.
Ooh, I like Phillip Rivers. He's one of my favorites.
I like Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers, though, is the perfect guy when every fantasy expert says you can wait on quarterbacks, right? And he goes with the 9th, 10th quarterback, and right there he's going to be within 6 or 7 touchdown passes of the leader, and that's a half a point a week, a half a touchdown a week. So Rivers is the perfect guy if you wait on quarterbacks, and he has been for 5 years.
Yeah, and he continues to do it. You're right. He's always undervalued come draft season, yet he always delivers. There's only been 1 year in his career that he wasn't a top 12 quarterback in fantasy, and I think that was way back in 2012. Every other season he started, he's been a top 12 fantasy quarterback. Yet he continues this year. He was coming off the board for some ADP is like the 15th quarterback drafted. I just don't see it. Doesn't make any sense to me. Everybody wants a shiny new toy.
All right, all you people in the chat room, all you people listening at home, and you have a question, I'm going to ask these guys a question you want to ask. How much do you look into the matchups? And the reason I'm saying that is Ben Roethlisberger plays the Baltimore Ravens this week. Big Ben's definitely a top 10 quarterback. I would say he's a quarterback I would probably play every week on my fantasy team. But where he struggles with the Ravens, we've had some backup quarterbacks have decent seasons. Jim, what's your thoughts on Roethlisberger against the Ravens this week?
I don't like him at all. He does have a terrible record on the road, and so many games where he hasn't thrown for more than a touchdown on the road. And Baltimore, man, they blanked Pittsburgh the last time they played him, and that was without Jimmy Smith. Now Jimmy Smith is back, and they continue to play great defensive football. I don't like Ben at all. I think this week, I have him like 18th in my rankings.
Yeah, that game's always a bloodbath. You got to stay away from it. It's just two guys who hate each other, two teams who hate each other, and they just fight up and down the field. And the receivers will, somebody will score a touchdown or two. The running backs will get theirs, but in terms of the quarterbacks, you're not going to see big production. I'd rather go elsewhere and find a Fitzpatrick or someone to put in my lineup this week.
Yeah, that's exactly the guy I was thinking about. I'm like, you know what? You get a little later in the season, and maybe you're in a contested playoff spot, and you're saying to yourself, "Am I really going to play Ryan Fitzpatrick over Ben Roethlisberger?"
I am, absolutely. I love Fitz. Look, I've been saying this all week. I'll keep saying it. There's only been 1 week all season, and that was back in week 4 when Fitz finally got pulled, and Winston went in against Chicago when Chicago was playing good defense. That's the only week of the season where a Tampa Bay quarterback hasn't been top 5.
Let me ask you guys this. I've got this is a question I have in a main league. I couldn't believe this. I had the 12th waiver claim, and I got Fitzpatrick. It just felt nobody picked him up, and these idiots are trading for quarterbacks all week long, and I got him. But regardless, who would you start? Deshaun Watson, who is at Denver, or Ryan Fitzpatrick at Carolina?
Ryan Fitzpatrick at Carolina. I think the Carolina defensive backs are not great, and they haven't rushed the passer well. And I still respect the Denver defense. They haven't played as well as they have in the past. And I don't think their cornerbacks are great, but they still have the linebackers and the front defensive line. So I would go with Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I'm going with Fitzpatrick, too. I have him as my number 4 quarterback this week. Look, nothing's changed. He's going to love to throw down the field. He's still got those great weapons. He's going to dust off Deshaun Jackson. He's going to dust off Godwin and Mike Evans and just go to town. Again, he may throw an interception or two, but I'll take that with the 370 yards and 3 touchdowns he throws.
There you go. All right, so America can see this here. I'm switching out Deshaun Watson for Ryan Fitzpatrick right there, live on the show. So it shall be done.
There you go. There you have it. Now, another strategy question about your lineups this week. Cooper Kupp coming back from a knee injury in a big game against the Saints, where we expect a high total. Jim, how do you deal with an injury here? And you just throw the guy back out there, thinking the team's not going to be wrong here?
It's always different with every single player. But, when you got somebody like Kupp who was really dominating before he got hurt and, playing well in a game that I expect them to have to throw a lot, I'm putting him back in. I am. I like this kid a lot. I think he's going to be a dynamic playmaker for years to come.
Brian, same thing with Cooper Kupp?
Yeah, it's tough. We've got, 6 teams on bye this week, so you could be missing Fitz or Boyd or AJ Green or whoever, anybody from the Eagles, Alshon. So yeah, if he's available, you're putting him in your lineup because he's got a good chance to score.
Jim, the Buffalo Bills' Derek Anderson probably is going to miss the game this week with a concussion. Is there any Buffalo Bill that's fantasy worthy?
I think LaShawn McCoy is. I think he's still going to be involved. He looked a little better last week, and he's been getting a little bit more involved of late. Of course, with Matt Barkley in there is not a great matchup no matter what you do. And, it is against Chicago. But, after their great start, they've been getting a little looser in their defense. And I could see McCoy, catching maybe hopefully 4 or 5 balls and getting you to that double-digit point.
I would rather start the dildo thrown on the field than any Buffalo Bill.
In what kind of fantasy game would that be, Brian?
Good fantasy. The ones you click on after this site when the show's over.
Now, I got another question for you guys. No, I don't think I'll get the same response, but Jim, is this the week Austin Eckler goes in lineups? Melvin Gordon's banged up. They play the Seahawks this week. Eckler, with Gordon playing, has put up good fantasy numbers to be a guy you can put in your lineup. Now, with Gordon questionable, what's your thoughts on Austin Eckler?
They're still saying it looks like Gordon is going to go. And, Eckler is a good, backup back. And with these 6 teams on bye, then, he definitely comes into play. He'll get some extra playing time so Gordon doesn't have to touch the ball 20 times. So, yeah, I think he makes a good play. But Seattle's defense is really starting to play pretty well right now and starting to come into their own. So I wouldn't, I would temper my expectations. It's not like he's going to come in and blow up.
He got 12 carries in the last game when Gordon didn't play, only put up 42 yards, but he still got 5 receptions for 26. So I think if he's going to come through, it's going to be that PPR aspect of it. He's a threat to score a touchdown. You can do a lot worse. Trust me, there's some skank on these waiver wires right now. So if he doesn't play and you own him, I got to say you start him.
I mean, if somebody asks me, Eckler or Elijah McGuire, I'm going to tell him Eckler.
Well, I'm going to give you a tougher question. You ready?
Yeah, sure, shoot.
Eckler or Dalvin Cook? According to ESPN Vikings reporter Courtney Cronin, Dalvin Cook will play 8 to 12 plays this week. If you know you're getting 8 to 12 plays, Jim, who do you play?
Eckler. I just want to beat Minnesota's coaches about the head and shoulders. Just let this kid get fully freaking healthy. You got the bye week next week. What the hell are you trying to do? Push him into this game? It makes
no sense when they have the bye week.
It's totally stupid. Man, I love Dalvin Cook, and he's killing me this year because I have him so often. But at this point, it's almost like I'd say, you know what? I'll lose him for the season if just to show these idiot coaches what stupid idiots they are. They should have just put him on IR to return back when he got injured. He'd be right close to being back and fully healthy by now.
Wow. Brian, what's your thoughts on what you do with Dalvin Cook this week? I mean, is there any chance you would play him?
Oh, absolutely not. He screwed me all season long in my biggest money league. I traded him a few weeks ago for Kenyon Drake and a wide receiver just to get somebody to play. There's 0 chance I'm putting him in. The only thing I can think of is that Minnesota wants Detroit to have to game plan for Cook and spend a couple minutes thinking about him, because you can't be serious that you're going to put this guy out there with his history of what he's done over the past few weeks with a hamstring. It's moronic. Mike Zimmer should be out on the street with Hugh Jackson if he plays him.
Yeah, that'll be interesting if he doesn't play. I'll tell fantasy owners, I'd be worried about that, even if he's in the lineup there. They're talking 8 to 12 plays. I've seen somewhere else 10 to 15. It wouldn't shock me if he doesn't play at all, even if he suits up. You can't use him there.
Yeah, no, I agree. But see, again, on the other side of the coin, we've seen guys who were supposed to be on snap counts come out and blow it away and, do it. But we can't trust him at this point. And I don't think there's anybody in the world wants to start him this week.
We're going there. Also, in that Minnesota team, you got Stephon Diggs banged up. He's questionable with a ribs injury. He says he's going to play. But, Jim, any concerns with Stephon Diggs?
Well, there has to be some concerns. Look, he doesn't really have a great history of playing when he's banged up or playing well when he's banged up. So definitely got to be a concern. And, if he's really this close to being a chance play this week, again, he's got a bye next week. Why are you going to rush him out there in a game that they should easily win?
Maybe it'll help Kyle Rudolph a little bit get off if he can, finally round back into form. He's been pretty bad this year. So he's playing against a Detroit team, I think, that's only given up 50 yards or a tight end twice. It seems like Diggs, if you go through his history, is always banged up. He's always got a knee, he's got a hamstring, an ankle. It never ends with this guy. And, it's all Thielen all the time. So I think they really want to just get him that 100-yard record. And, Diggs has almost become an afterthought in the offense.
Got a great question here from Fantasy Football Talk on Facebook. Jim, have you shut off the people? They can't join anymore?
I'm letting a few drib in, a few here, a few there. Not too many. Not like before where, we were getting 30, 40 requests a day. I've trimmed that down quite a bit.
Because Donald Trump will help you out if you want to keep people out.
There you go. He's going to he's going to shoot people that throw rocks.
Here's the first question from Jim Ellsworth. One of these guys, Chris Godwin, DJ Moore, Traquan Smith. I got to tell you, I picked up DJ Moore off the waiver wire. I haven't used him yet. I actually have to use him this week. Fishbowl League. Chris Godwin, I think, is the safest play out of this group. But, Jim, I'm so interested in Traquan Smith.
Yeah, but, hey, look, I like Traquan as a receiver, and I think, eventually he'll get there. But he's not fully rounded out yet. He's a, big play guy. He's got that bit of 10 gin in him where he could just run by defenders. And, if Breeze gets him the ball, he could hit big plays at any time. But like Ginn, we're going to see plenty of games where, he's looking at a 3 for 45-yard stat line. And, that's going to kill you on each and every week. I'd much prefer somebody who's going to be a little bit more consistent. And, Moore is definitely starting to come on. His plays, his snap counts are definitely starting to come up. His targets are starting to come up. He should definitely continue to be involved in that. And I like what I'm seeing out of him more than, what I think Traquan Smith is actually going to give you on a weekly basis.
I think that DJ Moore is just such a good matchup with Tampa Bay. That is juicy right there. But I think Traquan Smith can beat Marcus Peters over the top. He's been really bad this year guarding guys who like to get vertical down the field. So this is if there was ever
for a while, Brian. I think he's the most overrated cornerback of all time because he gets a ton of interceptions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet, when you're a great cornerback, nobody throws your way.
Yeah, you could be right. No, well, there's also a reason that a team got rid of you, okay? People don't like to give away shutdown corners, unless it's Darrelle Revis. But there's probably a reason that Kansas City was like, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, you can go over there. We don't mind. And Kansas City, even though their defense is suspect, they're one of the best teams in the league right now.
Yeah, I was talking about this on the Frenzy today. Just another pick from the 2015 first-round draft that is slowly starting to equal the terrible 2013 first-round draft. If you look at the 2015 draft, first two picks were Mariota and Winston. Okay, we know how well they're doing. You got guys in there like Eric Flowers. You got guys in there like Rashad Perriman. There's so many bad names in that first round. Marcus Peters was one of them. So many bad picks in that first round in that year. It's really starting to look it's taking a bad downhill turn.
Great question here by Rusty Garrett, and I'm going to say it's PPR, even though he didn't put it. James Conner or James White? Who do you start this week? Conner has been immense for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and of course, James White's the guy catching all the passes out of the backfield.
Wow, that is a good question. James Conner against Baltimore earlier in the season in a half-point PPR had less than 8 points. He had 9 attempts, 19 yards, and he caught 3 passes for 25. I think I'm going to go James White. I think, and that sounds crazy to say right now, but that's going to be a shootout, and I don't like the Green Bay linebackers to try to match up with him. I think he can get out there and kind of fire away at will and catch. He'll probably catch 10 passes on Sunday night.
I have to agree with Brian. I mean, if you really have to make this choice, and Conner going against Baltimore in Baltimore after getting pretty much shut out at home last time, he seems to be running better now. He seems to be running with a little bit more confidence as he this time of the season. Remember, he had that great first game, and then he started to slide the next couple of games. We're starting to see him really ramp it up again. So he is a guy that right now, even against this bad matchup, could easily put in, a goal line touchdown or could score on any play. He's playing that good. But James White is too. And James White is just so heavily involved in a matchup that just looks so much better for him. I'd have to go White as well.
Yeah, I mean, even with the banged up Sonny Michel, who's expected to play, but if he gets a little banged up there, we're seeing a guy, James White, that will get some carries anyway, and he might even get some goal line carries if Sonny Michel's out of that game.
And you saw last week, too, after the first couple of series when Patterson was getting some gimmicky work there, and the game was still tight because it was just a field goal fest. They trusted James White. He was on the field all the time. Barner never even sniffed the field barely in the second half. So, and especially in the game here with Green Bay, on national TV, Belichick wants to, win this game. And that's going to be my choice. I'm going to take James White. But, man, dude, you got some good running backs. Trade one to me. My teams are garbage at running back. That's a rich man's problem right there.
Now we have Dennis Vasco asking a quarterback question. I can't believe my answer on this one. Who you play this week, Joe Flacco, Alex Smith, or Baker Mayfield?
Flacco, Alex Smith, or Baker.
I'll go first. What do you guys think of it? I'm actually going Joe Flacco against the Pittsburgh secondary, which has been terrible. Baker Mayfield has a great matchup against Tampa's secondary, which has been horrible. But I'm not all in on Baker Mayfield. I think Joe Flacco's been a little more consistent this year. I like the wide receivers in Baltimore. I'm going to go Joe Flacco.
Well, Mayfield's actually playing KC, just to get that straight.
Yeah, that's what I meant, KC.
Just to get that straight so people don't send us angry letters.
I'm going to go Baker Mayfield there. I like that. They're going to be playing catch-up against the Chiefs. It's at home on the lake in Cleveland, and, he's going to have to throw it a ton. I think he's going to get Rashard Higgins back, who, if you're desperate at wide receiver this week, I think could be a real nice sneaky play. Probably get you 10 points easy in a PPR. So I'm going to go Baker Mayfield.
Man, I'm having a hard time with this one. It's so hard to trust what Cleveland is doing right now. I mean, especially with the coaching changes, we don't know what kind of changes we're going to see at them. Love the matchup, absolutely, but man, it's just hard to see. I mean, I might come back to that, but Pittsburgh, while on the course of the year, is ranked 28th against opposing quarterbacks. Over the last 5 weeks, they're actually 12th. So they've been playing a lot better. But, that being said, they still have given up 17 touchdowns in 7 games to quarterbacks. So, it's still a lot of numbers there. And, man, at Baltimore at home. See, the problem with trying to pick Flacco is this could easily be a 17-13 game with no offensive touchdowns. And that scares me. Who was the other option? Oh, yeah, no, Alex Smith. Another nice matchup, but, man, how can you trust Alex Smith? Crowder out again, Thompson out again. Man, it's probably going to be the Adrian Peterson show again. Man, you know what? I can't do Flacco. I'm going to go with Baker Mayfield here and trust that matchup, and hopefully it comes through. But that is a tough question.
We got a lot of good questions. Fantasy Football Talk on Facebook. You go there and you can always chime in, or if you don't want to chime in, you can read and get everybody's take. I got another one that's interesting here, and I'll tell you what, Jim. Week 1, people would have been insulting this guy, and even in your group, Jim, they would have insulted this guy for asking this question. What do you think of this trade? Adrian Peterson for David Johnson, Jim Day.
Yeah. I'm still taking David Johnson side of it. Look, again, Peterson, like I said, much better than I thought he would look. Playing great, ripped through my Giants last week, but 3 good games out of 7 doesn't get it done. David Johnson, while not putting up the numbers, we're expecting, has been quite consistent. And I do expect an uptick with Byron Leftwich there. So for me, it's David Johnson all day and every day.
How about you? Go with Adrian Peterson. He's on a team that's leading their division. They identified themselves as a team that needs to run the football because they kind of want to hide Alex Smith, and he's going to get 20 touches a game. He's shown that he can catch a few passes now, so that's bumping his value up. If he's catching 3-4 balls a week, that's free points you never thought you'd get from AP. So I'm going to take AP. That's my guy.
Wow, Brian's going the old guy there, and getting it done. Now, here's another very interesting question, but I don't think it's that interesting. I think that Matt Alby asked the question, Kerryon Johnson for Cortland Sutton. I'll tell you what, I'd rather get the running back every time, and I think Kerryon Johnson's only going to get better as the year goes on. Sutton, of course, will get more opportunities, but the Denver passing game, except Emmanuel Sanders, hasn't been great. We didn't see Demaryius Thomas put up big numbers. I like the Kerryon Johnson side of this deal.
It's not even a doubt for me. I'd take Kerryon Johnson in a heartbeat for the reasons we already discussed. I don't think Sutton is going to be as big a hit as everybody seems to think. So, yeah, I'd definitely take Kerryon Johnson. I love what I'm seeing out of him.
Well, it depends what your roster looks like, too. If you really need a wide receiver and you need that upside, then you go Kerryon Johnson. But like you guys, everybody knows you got to keep running backs. They're worth their weight in gold in fantasy. It depends what your roster is like. And here's another thing to think of. If you get Kerryon Johnson, whenever your trade deadline is, you can trade running backs for anything at the deadline. People are dying for them. So use a little bit of strategy there too.
Good. I totally agree. Good question here from Alfredo Mansour. Who is the safest start this week? Safer start. Why doesn't he ask who's going to score the most points? He wants safety. He wants to be loved. He wants to be hugged. He wants to be kissed. Alfredo, there's nothing safe. It's fantasy football. It's a tough man's game. Who is the safest start this week? Demaryius Thomas or Amari Cooper, Jim?
I'm going with Cooper all day. He's had more time to work with the offense, learn it. And from what I hear, he's doing he did a lot of work with them this past week to try and get into this offense as quickly as he could. And, Brian does the podcast on Tuesday night with Dwayne McFarland, who was here a couple of weeks ago when you had to be out, Tony. And he just did a really good article breakdown on Amari Cooper. And, one of the things that I took away from it is if you're throwing the ball to Amari Cooper, don't throw it anywhere from the knees to the shoulders. Throw it over his head or on the ground, and he'll catch those all the time. Anytime you put it in the middle of his body, he doesn't use the correct hand placement, and that's the balls that he's having the hardest time with, reeling them in and bringing them into his body. And Dwayne actually did a really good breakdown of that, and it made a lot of sense. Go back and watch tape, and it sure does seem to be, balls up in the air. He has no problem going up, high pointing them, taking them down, ripping them away from defenders. No problem with that. It's always the ball that's right in the middle of his chest that he seems to have a problem getting his hands right in the right place for. He
should have gone to Philadelphia or Carolina then with some quarterbacks who are slightly less accurate.
Yeah. How about this? Maybe he's nearsighted.
You never know. You just never know in this game. Too many things could go crazy. But, yeah, I'm taking Cooper this week. I think he has a better chance. Demaryius Thomas is going to be very limited in the number of plays he knows by now come Sunday. So I think he's going to be a little more limited in what he can do. I think Cooper's going to be wide open.
Another good question here. I can't pronounce your name. Ulysses Van Haleho is asking a question. Doug Baldwin this week, do I play in a shootout or do I go with Mark Ingram against the Rams? Baldwin or Ingram in the flex position? Jim, this is a tough one.
Look, I'm not playing Baldwin right now. He doesn't look good. He moved like crazy slow last week, not making good cuts at all. His knees are definitely bothering him. He had the one good week since he's come back, but the other 3 weeks, he hasn't done squat. Ingram hasn't been doing much either, but I think they're going to need to get this running game going and try to keep the offense off the field, for the Rams. So I think they're going to try and get Ingram going in this game. I think he's got a real good shot at getting a rush touchdown. Rams have given up 5 of those already. So I think he's got a good chance in this one. I'd take Ingram.
And Brian, what concerns me about Doug Baldwin and NFL players that have knee injuries is that the football career doesn't last forever, and you have to work after that. And with Doug Baldwin's knee injuries, I think he is going to have a hard time if he ever considered going into the adult film industry.
I have so many good jokes I could insert here that we'll talk about after the show. But
I'll hear a good joke.
Here's the issue with Doug Baldwin. He's getting about 5 targets a game. Russell Wilson's only throwing the ball 20 times a game. Yeah. So just the opportunities aren't there. And if your knee hurts, you can't separate. I mean, what are you going to do?
It's not the same Seattle offense.
No.
The number of passes to Wilson is the killer. I would go with Ingram.
Yeah, it is a killer, no doubt about it. Lockett is the number one there right now, and even Ed Dixon's getting involved, and David Moore is getting involved. We're just not seeing enough Baldwin, and his claim to fame was always that PPR points because he was getting 9-10 targets a game, and he's just not getting that now.
And Lockett only got 2 targets last week.
I know.
Yeah. Seattle's changed overnight.
He only completed 14 passes, but 3 of them went for touchdowns. Go figure.
Rigo Garcia. You have a lot of Italian Spanish people, Jim, in the fantasy football talk.
It's everybody I met at Olive Garden tonight.
Yeah, there you go.
He's got a quarterback question, too. Phillip Rivers or Mitchell Trubisky. I'm not a Trubisky guy, but I'm starting to say maybe he could play a little bit. I'm not sure. What's your thoughts on this Rivers-Trubisky situation?
Well, Trubisky's been playing real hot. I mean, even in that game last week in such high wins, he ended up having a nice fantasy game. He does get a tough Buffalo defense at home, though, this week. Buffalo over the last 5 weeks, number 1 against opposing quarterbacks, and that's including Tom Brady, that's including Luck, that's including Watson and Aaron Rodgers. So over those 5 games, one of them was Tennessee, so we can't count that. But Green Bay, Houston, Indianapolis, and New England, and Buffalo has been number 1 against opposing quarterbacks. I'm not really loving Mitch Trubisky this week.
And let's also say that Melvin Gordon may not play. So if he doesn't play, they're not going to lean on Austin Eckler as much, and it's going to give Phil Rivers more opportunities against Seattle.
I agree. Little side note, Jim does a great job putting together a bunch of leagues for all the people prior to the season. And I did one of his best ball leagues, and I tried a situation that I don't know if it was going to work or not. I never tried it before, where I was going to pick 3 great quarterbacks and see how I'm doing. And the reason I chose to do this is because I think whenever you spend an early draft pick, no matter what the fantasy sport is you're paying for predictability. It's the guy that's most likely to give you those odds each and every time, and guys with proven track records. So I drafted Aaron Rodgers in the 2nd round. I think Tom Brady in the 4th round and Matt Ryan in the 6th round. And I was able to squeeze in Kareem Hunt, Adam Thielen in the mix, right? Adam Thielen. And I'm 10 points out of first place, Jim, with that 3 quarterbacks.
Well, there you go. That's different. Definitely different. Usually, best ball, I know I'm going to get 3. I usually don't care. I want 1 solid one, and I'll take 2 others. But, hey, if it works, it works. Every year is going to be different, though. I mean, just because it worked for you that in that one league wouldn't mean it would work for you in the other, because it really comes down to the other combination of players that you have also having to do something, because you're only getting one of those QB scores a week. If you don't have the rest of the team to do what they need to do as well, it's not going to help you that much.
I've never played in the best ball league. I'm a pathetic. I can't even call myself a fantasy host. I'm a loser.
What the hell?
I can't
How do you
believe
not
you never
put
played.
the ball league?
Yeah.
Really? Never
How do you
won,
not
huh?
play the ball league?
I just, you know what? I don't know. You hear the freaking draft app commercials 8,000 times a day, but I just never got into one. I don't know. Maybe next year I've got to get invited to one and try to play.
Jeez.
I love them. Look, my biggest problem during seasonal leagues is getting too cute in my lineup decisions. I'm always trying to think past the next step. If I'm seeing this trend, well, so is the defensive coordinator. So if they're seeing that trend, what are they doing? How do I counter that? And I just get too wrapped up in my own head of making the decision. And 9 times out of 10, it bites me in the ass because I get too cute. So, best ball brings out, my favorite thing to do in this is to draft. I love to draft. I could draft every day, any day, and just love it. I love putting my thoughts up against everybody else's and seeing how I fare. And but best ball allows me to do that, in 100 more leagues without having to worry about trying to set lineups and do waivers every week.
I agree. I love it. I actually do it in all the sports now. As many best balls as I can, because drafting, I think, is the greatest part. And when you do shows like this, people don't realize that your ratings, your highest ratings are prior to the season. When it's everybody's in draft season. As the season goes on, it drops 5 to 10% each week as people get eliminated from their fantasy rosters. But with the best balls, Jim, you can do enough that you always have a chance to be right there at the end.
Yeah, no, I like it. Based on the fact that, not only do you get to do all those drafts and not have to worry about every week, Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning, oh my God, I got to get my waivers in and going crazy trying to get them all in while you're doing everything else you have to do. But it does allow me to see, over the course of the year, where my decisions were right, where my decisions were wrong, what I could have done to change that, and try and use that to help me, go into the next season and try to stop the predictable errors that I made this year.
All right, here we go. Fact or fiction? I'm going to go from every NFL game this week. I'm going to ask a fact or fiction. First game up, Falcons, Redskins. Jim, Jordan Reed is a starter every week in fantasy football.
Oh, he's not a starter every week, but I like him this week against Atlanta. That middle of defense has been, just decimated by injuries, and, that they're 21st in the league so far in points per game, PPR points per game to tight ends over the last 5 weeks. I definitely think, Reed got a little bit more involved last week. Hopefully that trend continues. Again, it looks like Crowder's out. It looks like Thompson is out. They're going to need all hands on deck against a suddenly tough Washington team.
Brian, fact or fiction? Jordan Reed is a starter each and every week.
I mean, tight end's a tough position, man. If you've got Jordan Reed, you probably invested probably an 8th round pick or so on him. I think you got to start him every week unless you could pick somebody else better off the waiver wire. But I mean, it's total crapshoot. So if I had Jordan Reed, I'm probably sticking him in there.
Especially this week with 6 teams on bye.
Yeah.
Lions and Vikings this week. Jim, Matthew Stafford, is he an every week starter? We talk about all the time Russell Wilson having less throws. Matt Stafford has less throws. Is Stafford a starter every week?
No. Stafford does have less throws as well, like Wilson, and that's always been the thing that's kept him as a top 12 quarterback is the fact that he's going to throw and throw and throw. Now that, all of a sudden Kerryon Johnson is giving them a running game, he is, right in the middle of the pack of a QB2 so far in the season. He's had I'm trying to remember. I think 4 games of 20-plus points, but then, the other 3 have been 17, 18, and even week 1, I think it was less than 15 points. So, no, he's not an every week starter. Right now, he's a matchup guy, and it really depends. I would play him more against a team that has a really good, stout run defense, trying to, limit Kerryon Johnson. Those are the games I would play him in right now.
He still had 40 attempts last week. I was thinking the same thing, they don't throw anymore, but, he threw a lot against Seattle. But what we still see with Matt Stafford is Yeah, and he's very turnover prone. So if you're losing 2 points for an interception in your league, it's like playing Jameis Winston or Fitzpatrick. You just got to kind of suck it up and say, okay, well, I'm going to lose basically a touchdown's worth of points because this guy can't hold on to the pigskin.
Well, wait. Let's take that a step back, though. I mean, yes, normally that I would agree with you. In years past, he's thrown a lot of interceptions. This year, week 1, he threw 4 interceptions against the Jets. But since then, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but trying to go through it in my head. But I'm pretty sure he's only had 2 interceptions the rest of the games.
2 since then. Last week had one, also lost a fumble.
Okay, but if I remember correctly, the fumble wasn't really his fault. As he was going back, the guy just literally just really crushed his freaking hand. And I don't think anybody would have held that ball.
But there's no upside with Matt Stafford right now. You look at his scoring.
I'm not trying to argue with you. I agree. He's not a QB1. I'm just saying, for the right reasons, I just don't think he's passing enough to get him into that range.
And he just lost a big weapon in Golden Tate.
Right.
Steelers and Ravens. Is Buck Allen a top 24 running back this week? Buck Allen, top 24 running back this week. Jim, fact or fiction?
Fiction, totally fiction. First of all, he got Ty Montgomery now, and so I don't know if it's going to happen this week, but by next week, Buck Allen is going to take a seat behind Montgomery. Montgomery is definitely an upgrade to Buck Allen, in my opinion, and gives them a little bit more viability and flexibility what they can do with him. Buck Allen, started out the season strong after that first week 1 fumble by Alex Collins, and Buck Allen was all of a sudden the guy in the passing game and the goal line. But we've seen that really start to cool down on him now. And then with the acquisition of Ty Montgomery, Buck Allen is a guy right now I feel pretty strongly you can drop.
Yeah, he shouldn't be on anybody's team right now. Absolutely not.
No Bucks. Very sad. Very sad. I'm very sad. Chiefs and Browns go at it this week, Jim. New coach, new offensive coordinator, poor defense. This is the week to own Duke Johnson.
Man, we've been saying, a lot of people have been saying that pretty much every week, especially since they gave up Carlos Hyde. We expected Duke Johnson to be involved. Hasn't happened yet. Man, I hope it does. Look, I hope it does. This kid is too good a talent to be sitting on the bench doing nothing. I could see it more before with Carlos Hyde there, because Carlos Hyde is a good pass catching back in his own right. So I could see it then. But now with him gone, Nick Chubb isn't really known as a pass catching back. I think they have to get Duke Johnson more involved. If for nothing else, to get some of the defense off Landry and, pull it to other places on the field. And I think that has to happen.
I don't think you want to start him. I don't think Duke Johnson's even a rosterable guy at this point, to be honest. When would you ever feel comfortable putting him in a lineup? I don't think Mayfield has shown the propensity to look to him. I don't think he's been coached up enough to do that in that offense. And even David Njoku didn't get a target last week. And we're looking at Duke Johnson doing something, but I'm not feeling that at all.
Last week, I think, was a total aberration. They just got crushed from the start. I mean, late into the game, Baker Mayfield only had 99 yards passing. I think late into the third quarter, if I remember correctly, they just got crushed from the get-go. I think last week was a total aberration, but I'm a little scared of what we see out of them this week. And I'm definitely not. I'm definitely not telling anybody to start Duke Johnson. I'm saying the team, as an NFL team, needs to get him involved. I'm not saying he should be anywhere near your fantasy lineup.
All right, I'll look at this step then.
They've played 8 games, and in 8 of those games in a half-point PPR, he only has 2 weeks over 5 points.
Yeah.
All right, but here's the thing. You ready? If you own Duke Johnson and he's sitting on your roster and you don't play him this week, you'll never play him again, because they're going to be behind the Kansas City. They're going to throw the ball. He should be on the field. They got rid of the offensive coordinator. They got rid of the head coach. So, Jim, if people don't use him this week, there's no sense to have him on your fantasy team.
And that's exactly what Brian was just saying. Hey, look, it could happen. It absolutely could. The kid's a good ball player. We saw last year what he's capable of doing when he gets a chance. Hopefully, the new offensive coordinator, new coach, realize that they need to get him involved. It doesn't look like they're going to have Callaway this week, although they are getting Higgins back. But still, you need to get him involved. But, like Brian said also, it doesn't look like Baker has gotten to the point where he can get all the way to that check down to that running back before he needs to get rid of the ball. And, that's always a concern. If it's not an outright play where he knows he's going to the running back right away, he's probably not going to have time to get to him in his reads.
People don't understand how hard that is to learn because it's such a short throw. People think, oh, anyone can throw to the running back. And Jim's exactly right. It's a third option in most of these plays for the quarterback. And for a young quarterback to get down to the third option, that never happens in high school. It probably doesn't happen in college a lot of times either. And to throw the ball to the third option out of the running back, Jim's right. That's tough. A lot of quarterbacks have a hard time picking that up.
Duke Johnson is going to be on a Millionaire Maker team next week. I guarantee it, because they play the Falcons, who give up the most receptions to running backs. You watch, he'll suck it out this week. He'll get cut by everybody. Next week, 10 receptions for 120 yards and a touchdown.
The Falcons have given up 62 receptions so far to running back. So I that's a nice call. Hey, look, I hope it happens. He could definitely help me in a couple of best ball leagues where I have him.
All right, the number's 42. Will 42 people watch the Jets-Dolphins game that don't live in New York or Miami area, Jim? 42 people watch the Jets versus the Dolphins.
Is this an over-under?
Yes.
Oh, man. There's still people in Miami who believe in the Dolphins and think they can turn it around, so I'm going to go with the over, but just slightly.
Over. Who are you looking for the most fantasy relevance in this game?
Kenyon Drake has been playing well. I expect him to continue. I think Danny Amendola is another decent play in PPR. As far as the Jets, Crowell it's a great matchup for him. He should get plenty of work with Powell out. They get McGuire back this week, but how much is he really going to be involved just coming off the IR? I don't think it'd be a ton. Trenton Cannon might give him a little bit here, but this should be Crowell's show in a matchup that looks really good on paper. Will he do it? I have no freaking clue, because with him, matchups don't seem to matter. He goes out against, teams where he should explode and does nothing. He goes out against teams that should shut him down and goes off. I just have no idea what to make of Crowell.
Tony, remember years ago when if anybody's under the age of like 35 here, you're never going to get this reference, but you had your VCR and you had to put it on a certain channel to watch a show. Like it had to be on channel 3.
Yeah.
That's the only reason this game gets more people. There's some old folks in a retirement home in Boca Raton, and their VCR watching the Golden Girls has to be on whatever the CBS station is that airs this game.
I totally agree. I'm like, oh boy, this is a rough one.
Well, wait, let's back it up for a second, because Gregory Castillo in the chat room brings up a good point. What do you guys think about Devontae Parker after his big game last week?
You can't trust him, but he's the most talented guy they have. And if he wants to get a new contract somewhere else after this year and move on, then he's got to ball out for the rest of the season. If you can pick him up, put him in as a wide receiver 3 or a flex in your lineup, there's a lot worse guys out there because he's talented and there's nobody else who can stretch the field on that team.
I have a hard time believing in a 12-team league, if you have 3 wide receivers in a flex and 6 teams in a bye, that you have better options. That I think he'll be in everybody's lineup this week. Amendola is a guy that absolutely can play, but staying healthy, getting out there in a number of plays, I can't believe he's made it through this part of the season. I like Devontae Parker going the rest of the way.
See, my problem with Parker is he's just never shown a propensity to do well in back-to-back weeks, and that scares me. He's only had, outside of last week, he's only had 4 other 100-yard games in 42 career starts. So the numbers don't really show high. Man, it's so hard. They will probably have to throw a little bit in this one and He should be involved, but man, I have a hard time, like you said, trusting him for anything each and every week. But like, another good point, 6 teams on bye. And, if you're playing in leagues that have 3 wide receivers in a flex, he's probably going to be in your lineups, and I can't fault you for that. I just don't have a lot of trust in him. Luckily for me, I don't have him on any of my rosters.
Jim, which Bears wide receiver other than Allen Robinson, who's questionable this week, will have the most fantasy points against the Bills?
Ooh, man. Can I say Tariq Cohen?
No.
It should be Gabriel, but if Robinson doesn't go, then Gabriel should see a big dose of Travarius White there. Oh man, geez. Yeah, I don't like it at all.
It's Anthony Miller time. It's Miller time.
I don't like Miller either. They've been damn good about shutting down slot receivers too. Man, that's a tough one for me. I'm having a hard time. I don't like Chicago this week. Buffalo at home has been playing good defense. Their offense still sucks ass, but they've been playing good defense.
There's only one answer for this.
Kevin
White.
Kevin White. Hey, another 2015 bust.
I'm going to hit Kevin White in the head with a dildo after he scores a touchdown in the end zone I'm sitting in this week.
Hey, you got dildos on the mind tonight. What the hell's going on with you?
It's a Friday night, and name another podcast in America that's used the word propensity twice in a show.
I want to know another podcast that used the word dildo twice in a show.
Buccaneers and Panthers. Who has the most fantasy points this week? Humphreys, Godwin, or Deshaun Jackson, Jim Day?
Oh, I'm going Deshaun. Look, his boy is back. Fitz is back. And, even with Fitz out, Deshaun was still playing good football, getting in double digits every week. But now Fitz is back. I'm going with Deshaun. These boys are just sitting there drooling, waiting to get out there. I know it's not, Carolina's a pretty good defense. They're not great. They can definitely be beat. But, yeah, I like Jackson in this one. I like Godwin, too. Don't get me wrong. He scored all 3 times, first 3 games of the year when Fitz was quarterbacking. But I love Deshaun Jackson this week.
Brian, who do you have?
I'm going to say Chris Godwin. I like the way he is around the goal line. He scored a lot of touchdowns early on with Fitz. That's an easier game flow player, if that makes sense. He could score more organically than Deshaun Jackson, who needs a shot play to score. So I'm going to say Chris Godwin, just in the natural flow of a game, can get into the end zone and doesn't need it to be a 60-yard bomb over the top.
But that's what Fitz loves to throw, those 60-yard bombs.
I got him in my lineup thanks to you guys. He better throw 1 or 2 of those.
I threw in 1 white wide receiver, and nobody took him. Next up, the Chargers and the Seahawks. Brian, which Williams has the most fantasy points in this game?
I'm going to say Tyrell Williams. He's been doing really well the past couple of games. He's not getting a boatload of targets at all, but, he's producing. He's catching balls and he's scoring. I know Jim's a big Mike Williams guy. I just heard you were getting your balls busted on the frenzy the other day. For that, I tuned in and saw that. But I'm going to go with Tyrell. At the end of the day, some Williams is going to make a play. So just spin the wheel of Williams and put one of them in.
I'm going. Yeah, I'm going, Mike. Look, the thing I like, he still got the long touchdown last week. Of course, it was only freaking catch Phil Rivers. I want to strangle you. But he was targeted twice in the end zone, which I liked. Defender made good play both times to strip the ball, but he was targeted twice in the end zone. I think that's an uptick. I've been talking to a couple of the beat writers out there, and they say, look, he's involved, but it seems like they're rolling over a safety on him pretty much all the time, and that's really, really putting a crimp in what he can do.
Now, unbelievable this week. We have the Texans and the Broncos playing each other after the trade. Jim Day, who has more fantasy points, Cortland Sutton or Demaryius Thomas?
Oh, man. You know what? I'm going with the quarterback that's playing better, and that's Watson. I'm going to say Demaryius Thomas, even in the limited play, role, whatever he's going to have. He's going to be able to do enough. Again, I'm not sold on Sutton. I can't say that enough. He could prove me wrong, but, like Ryan was saying earlier, there's just some holes to his game. And just because he's had some really nice flashes doesn't mean he could be a consistent game in, game out player.
I'm going the other way. I like Cortland Sutton. He's got the chemistry, at least. He knows the playbook, and he's going to be thrust into a starting role. We don't know how much of the offense that Demaryius Thomas knows or how much they really are going to game plan for him to do. Plus, if he's going up against Chris Harris, I mean, these guys have banged each other daily in practice. He kind of knows his moves, and it's like going up against your brother out there. So I'm going to go Cortland Sutton. I think he scores at home, big coming out party. They want to show the fan base why they made this move, and they're going to force feed him the ball at home at Mile High in Demaryius Thomas's face.
Be interesting to see if that happens.
Yeah, Saints and Rams. What's most likely to happen? Drew Brees has 40 passing attempts, or Todd Gurley has 25 carries or touches, Jim?
Ooh, let's see. I think Drew Brees throwing the ball 40 times is probably a better bet. Gurley, no, I don't know. Gurley's been hitting close to that number pretty much every week. But New Orleans' defense has been very stout against the run, not so much through the air. Man. But then again, if you put Gurley out there, you're limiting Brees. See, this is what I do. I get in my head and I go freaking nuts. I go back and forth. I start thinking like a defensive coordinator than an offensive coordinator, and I drive myself crazy sometimes. I would say Drew Brees throwing the ball 40 times. I think there's a chance Rams get out to a lead and he has to come back.
Ryan?
Interesting that I'm reading here that the Saints haven't given up a 70-yard rusher or 60 yards receiving to a back in any game this year. But that's a tough guy to hold down, man. Gurley is just on another level. So I think he's going to get his 25 touches in route to a Rams victory.
I think that Brees throws the ball 40 times. When they have a big game, they like to throw it around. I think Brees throws 40 times. I think they both get it, to tell you the truth, Jim.
Yeah, it's definitely very possible for two different reasons. Absolutely. Gurley's trying to keep Brees off the field, and Brees is trying to score.
Patriots, Packers. Who has more fantasy points? Jim, Devontae Adams or Julian Edelman?
Oh, I'm going with Adams. Adams is just playing lights out right now. Look, I like Edelman, and definitely he's a guy that Brady likes, but Adams is just playing off the charts right now, and I'm not taking that away. We know New England likes to take away your top threat, and of course that's Adams. I just think they're going to have a hard time doing it. But don't be surprised if you see three guys bracketed on Adams every damn play.
Is that Devin McCourty, the corner there for the Patriots? I think he's been playing really well. And I remember in the Super Bowl, he shut down Alshon Jeffrey once he switched over to him. I'm going to go with Julian Edelman. I think he's going to find a lot of holes underneath. Those young corners and safeties. They got rid of Ha Clinton Dix. So maybe you see Josh Gordon taking a little more, a couple more balls over the top. And I think Edelman's going to eat in the middle of the field because Gronk's not right. He doesn't look good. And Edelman is going to eat 10, 11, 12 passes over the middle of the field and probably score a touchdown.
Who do you got? Rodgers or Brady, Brian?
Boy, you can't go wrong either one here. Just be happy that you're not, starting Matt Stafford. But if I had to pick one, I'm going to say Aaron Rodgers because they have less of a running game, if that's possible, between these two teams.
I agree that they do have less of a running game. And who would think that? Jim, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, same exact reason, especially if Sony Michel is back. I think Rodgers is going to have to throw to catch up, and Brady might not have to throw as much if Michel's in there.
Titans and Cowboys on Monday Night Football. Who has more fantasy points, Dak Prescott or Marcus Mariota, Jim?
I'm going with Prescott. I like what I've been seeing of him lately. Beginning of the year, he was just not there. I don't know what was going on. None of the wide receivers stepped up, but he just wasn't getting anything going. He's definitely been playing better, looking sharper, looking more confident. And now you add Amari Cooper, who, while I'm not the biggest fan of, gives them a legitimate, number one wide receiver that defenses have to pay attention to. Should open up the whole offense for him.
If it wasn't for Amari Cooper being traded here and fantasy owners wanting to see that, this game would rival the Thursday night crap fest. As probably the most boring game of the weekend with these two offenses. But yeah, it'll be Dak Prescott.
It's America's team.
No, they're not. There's no.
America makes a lot of poor choices, as we've seen.
They haven't been America's team for quite a while. Sorry. Unfortunately, no.
Jim, any final words before we get out of here?
No, man. Thanks to everybody who's listening. Please give us a like or comment or rate us 5 stars on iTunes if you're listening. We appreciate it. All the help you can give us would be great. Thanks to Tony and Brian for moving it to Friday. Wednesday night was an issue, so we were able to do it tonight. And thanks to everybody who listens. Good luck in week 9. And, nothing else. Brian, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
Find me on Twitter at Drake Fantasy, and you can find me Sunday at 1:00 at Ralph Wilson State or New Era Field at Ralph Wilson Stadium, throwing items on the field and trying not to get beat up.
Throwing items or throwing dildos?
Whatever I can get my hands on.
Yeah, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. Never mind.
Hey-o.
Well, thanks everybody for listening. This has been the WTF Fantasy Football Podcast, episode 13. How cool would it have been to do it on Halloween, episode 13? But we did it tonight. So hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next week, folks. Good luck in week 9. We are out.